Welcome to the Raiders Training Camp Podcast, presented by SiriusXM. Live from the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center, here are your hosts, Jesse Merrick and Eddie Pascal.
All right, and we are back for another episode of the Raiders Training Camp Podcast, presented by SiriusXM. And for those of you watching on the YouTube, Jesse and I have changed locations. We are here in the big studio doing some things and some experimentation. It feels good to be under the lights, doesn't it, Jesse?
It does, man. This beautiful studio in here. Obviously get to show things off a little bit. A little more casual setting as well.
Yeah, and casual is always good, right?
Yeah,
I think that when you get Eddie and Jesse together, it's going to be casual. We're going to have a lot of fun. We'll get from A to Z, but we don't need to be in the suits and the ties and all that. That's not us.
I do enough of that.
Yes, you sure do.
Yeah.
Yes, you sure do on News 3 here in Las Vegas. But Jesse, we're now progressing through training camp. I think technically called this week 2, second full week. Yeah. We're getting ready for a preseason game, which is going to be fantastic. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We're also going to talk to our pal Hunter Renfro to break down all things camp, all things Animal Kingdom. We got to
dive into a little bit of everything.
We got a little bit of everything. So stick around to hang out and hear us talk to Hunter. But past couple of days at camp, right? We're now officially into the groove of things. What's really stood out to you when you watch these 2022 Raiders?
I mean, I think you can see the progression, as things move forward to that game-like atmosphere, which we're obviously going to see, come Thursday. Guys are improving. The competition along the offensive line is really heating up. That's one of the things that stood out the most to me. I think we're starting to see things develop a little bit more in that area and seeing guys really get opportunities there, both at right guard and right tackle in particular.
Yeah, and I think that right side of the line, the entire right side of the line is one area that you and I have circled on our list for things that we want to see over the next 4 or 5 weeks. But switching sides of the ball, I mean, for me, one thing that's really stood out, and we talked about this last week when we were doing the show, is I think that the Raiders DBs had a really nice week last week. Well, pick it up and do it again, because I think they had a really nice week again this week. And I've been really pleasantly surprised by that group, just in one, the kind of playmaking ability, but two, they've been doing it day in and day out. This is a group that's been consistent doing it.
They have, and that to me, speaks volumes for them, because this is such a solid receiving core, so many weapons that they have in that group. So to be able to stand up to the test of taking those guys in and day out. And we see the receivers, having their days as well. There's a back and forth battle between there. So that I think is exciting. It's something that Raider Nation should love to see as these guys continue to grow, because that's an area so many people think is a massive question mark. I don't think that's the case for them, really.
Yeah, and I would kind of find myself probably like somewhere in the middle, right, where it's maybe a small question mark, like a lowercase question mark for me, because I think, look, the absence of Trayvon Mullen is still something that we're waiting to see how that kind of pans out. Does he come back? When will he come back? What will he look like when he comes back? But I think that the depth there has been something that I've been really excited about. I mean, Rock Ya-Sin has looked very much like we have wanted Rock Ya-Sin to look. Yeah. And I think that with him, it's a case of, okay, we know what you can be. We saw it for a little bit last year watching from afar in Indy. But he has very much day-to-day been that dude out wide for the Raiders.
He definitely has been. He's shown, his chops in man-to-man coverage, being a physical type of guy, and a great job ball hawk in the sense of not interceptions and things like that, but getting in there with pass breakups, And I think that's what we've seen a lot from this secondary, getting in there, knocking the ball away. Derek Carr noted, I believe it was yesterday, talked about the fact that it's sticky coverage. He even said, some of it's tighter than he's seen in many games, And so this is that time of year where you see that battle really going on back and forth between that group. So what they have shown has been massive, particularly, like you said, Rock Ya-Sin, Anthony Averett getting a ton of reps now as well, with Trayvon Mullen not in the mix. When he does come back, if he does, whatever the timeline is on that one, think about how much more the competition heats up in that group, because he's obviously the guy that wants to come in and show to this coaching staff what he can do. So I think we're really only going to see this group continue to get better.
And one guy we haven't even mentioned yet is Nate Hobbs.
Exactly.
Nate Hobbs had a really, really nice day at work today as we record this on, what's today, Jesse? Monday, right?
Today is Monday, yes. I had to think about that for a second as well.
We've reached that point, like, is today Monday? But he had a really nice day today, really sticky coverage. That one play on Davante Adams that resulted in Davante essentially kicking the pylon. Like, this is a guy who we talk so much about that jump from year 1 to year 2. You and I have talked about it with Trayvon Merrick, but I think Nate's going to be the same way, where we really see kind of that nice jump from him this preseason.
Yeah, I think so as well. And he's a guy, this was one of the ones we talked about in our training camp preview show when we were doing some of those things about, was he going to get any snaps outside? He's taken a couple reps here and there on the outside, so it's been fun to kind of watch that happen for him. And take advantage of those. And again, continue to build off of the year that he had last year. That's something with Nate Hobbs. We all know what he brings to the table, but being able to build off of last season and do it against a guy like Davante, very, very impressed with him. Also, we're talking secondary as a whole. Trayvon Merrick continues to impress. Darren Waller hasn't been out there the last couple of days, so we've been deprived of that battle. But anytime Trayvon's been in coverage, he has shined, very well. Looks like he's taking that next step in terms of his coverage as well.
And just going back to Nate for a sec, we were hanging out with some of our our friends from the national media here today, and a couple of them brought up the fact that, oh, I see you, Nate Hobbs.
Yeah.
I see you. So, like, if the national guys are coming in and they see you doing your thing, you're doing something right.
Exactly. Anytime someone like that kind of jumps off to the page, because, you know, a lot of times when the national guys jump in, they're not going to be following some of the deeper battles that we're watching. They're doing it more in that, like, broad landscape of things. So they're looking for those playmakers. And again, they're going to look for guys to continue to stand out and build off of what they did. And Nate has done just that, has come as advertised as he was last year.
And he's a guy that's incredibly interesting to me for a variety of reasons. Number one of which, you hit the nail on the head, where is he a guy that is versatile enough to go inside, to go outside?
Yeah.
Can he spell a Rock Ya-Sin? It'll be really interesting to see what Patrick Graham does with him, because we've heard so much about how multiple Patrick Graham can be, how versatile, how he's going to change things from week to week to week. Like, the Nate Hobbs role in 2022, whatever it is going to be fascinating.
It is. It really is. And I talk about this all the time anytime we talk about Nate. I want to see how he's used as a blitzer. I haven't seen it a ton throughout camp thus far, but I'm excited to see, you know, where they send him from as he moves around. Obviously, he's majority going to be in the slot, but, you know, what the looks look like when they do send him on the blitz. That's going to be, I think, exciting to see, because he has that other element to him where he can go in there and get it and mix things up in the pocket there.
And he flashed that a little bit last year, too.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like we're you know, hypothesizing, oh, can he do this? Does he have this good? We saw it last year.
Yeah.
And so now seeing how Patrick Graham is kind of going to unleash that part of his game is going to be a blast. But before we get to our guy, Hunter Renfrow, sticking in that wide receiver room, today, play of the day, Mac Hollins, dude, and it's not even close in the end zone.
Not even. That was an unbelievable one-handed diving, correct?
Diving, falling.
I mean, it was, corner of the end zone and the goal line, you know, drill there. I mean, that was a lot of fun to see him pull that in. The fans obviously went nuts. There was a lot of people at practice, a lot of local high school players and things like that as well. Everyone went ballistic. The play of, honestly, the last couple days. I mean, there's no other one that stands out more to me than that. Also, too, we got to give a little love to Divine Diablo. Came down with an interception today as well. You know, he's looked good in coverage. That was a big part of his game, of why he got the opportunity last year and continues to grow in that area.
It's pretty incredible to think that how, and I mean this in a great way, how trendy the Divine was last year, especially towards the end of the year. He seems like a dude who's kind of gone under the radar the first week or two of camp.
He does. That's the thing. We haven't talked about him much.
Yeah.
You know, and even today, when he did have that interception, I was like, wait a second. You know,
yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah, I started remembering when they were playing one-on-ones and things. I'm like, oh, okay, well, he's shown some good things. You kind of forget about him. You kind of honestly, you know, of the storylines that we're watching with this team, you kind of forget about the linebackers, you know, specifically with this defense, too. I think a lot of people forget about him. Just because you have a guy in Denzel Perryman who has just locked down that spot, so you don't really think too much, I guess, about the guys around him or how active they're going to be. But that's going to be a key position on this defense as well. So having a guy like Divine in year 2 that continues to grow and continues to make plays like that, that's huge for this defense.
Yeah, absolutely huge. And speaking of guys that have made a lot of plays, granted, on the offensive side of the football, our pal Hunter Renfrow. And we talked with Hunter earlier today, and it was a lot of fun, man. It was just a blast. And you and I were talking. The beauty of Hunter is that he's willing to have fun with you, right? He's willing to engage in the shenanigans. He gets what we're trying to do. But we talk a lot of football, too, which is important as well.
Yeah, we do. I mean, look, Hunter's a guy that can sit there and talk about just about anything. I honestly feel like, you know, you lob it up to him and he's going to take it from there. You know, so always a good conversation, you know, very insightful from him. We talked about Davante Adams as well, having him in that group. I saw yesterday Davante actually came up to him asking him for some advice on something that he had done. So that relationship is already budding and growing into something really cool that I think will pay dividends for both of them on the field.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that's the goal for this entire fan base, right? That those two are feeding off of each other. It's a very symbiotic relationship, and it results in a lot of trips to the end zone. So everybody sit back, relax, and enjoy our conversation with friend of the program, Hunter Renfrow.
SiriusXM puts you inside the Raiders training camp. Catch all the info on the team, plus your music, talk, comedy, and more. Subscribe now and get your first 3 months free. Be there with the Raiders.
And man, we are so excited to be joined by friend of the program, Hunter Renfrow. Hunter, I feel like we get you on at least once every 10 days during camp, but you're always such a good guy, always happy to come on, and we appreciate you hanging out with us, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm excited to talk about camp and talk about the season coming up.
So speaking of camp, so today we come off the field, it's 100 degrees, it's hot, it's humid, it's muggy. I'm sure you feel right at home in that. Yeah. But yesterday, we're brought off the field in a torrential I mean,
I know.
Like, you couldn't have two more opposite days.
I know. It felt like the movie Holes, you know, like whenever it just starts pouring down rain at the end of the movie. You know, literally as soon as we walked to bring it up at the end of practice, it just started downpouring. And it was weird because I was talking to my wife last night too, and when we first got to Vegas, it was like a oasis, or not an oasis, but a drought. Sorry, mixed up words there. And it had like not rained forever. And so, we've gotten a little bit of rain the last couple of weeks, and it's been good, and it's been cool.
Justin, it is strange to see it rain. I've been here for about 3.5 years, and it's just wild getting used to when it does rain, the streets flooding, all that stuff. I mean, that part's always hard to get used to for sure.
Yeah, no, I like it. It gives a good change up during camp.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of camp, we're now 10, 11 days, whatever we are, 12 days into it. Are you at the point now where you still know what day of the week it is? Because Jesse and I were talking about it, and we lost it about 3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah.
So, no, I forget all the time. Usually my wife will make me go put out the trash Friday night, I'll remember. And then Mac Hollins will wear his do-rags. And so his do-rags, he'll wear red on Sunday. He'll wear navy blue on Mondays. And so every day of the week he has a different do-rag. That's the only way I can remember what day of the week is.
That's pretty great. Mac's an interesting cat. We've heard some cool stuff about him. I know Eddie just did something with him as well. What's your take on him as a whole? I know he's got the Mac Hollins smile, all that stuff.
Yeah, he's got everything. He's got his kind of infomercials on Instagram on Fridays. He's like, this week we're talking end cuts or talking iguanas, whatever it is. So he's an interesting guy. He's a great guy, great teammate, great guy to be around. Knows the playbook real well, and just a lot of fun. We go through football, and we have hard practices and we have games, but you remember your relationships in the locker rooms and, the guys you go and do the work with. And so, he's just one of those special guys that you want to cheer for and you want to see succeed.
And I mean, you look at that whole wide receiver room as a whole, and we've kind of looked at it from the outside looking in, but just on paper, such a unique, talented group in so many different ways, right? You got, we talked about Mac, Devontae, obviously. It seems like there's a great mix of guys who have been there, done that at a really high level, guys on the ascend, and then guys still very much trying to prove themselves as well. Yeah,
good mix of older guys, younger guys, middle guys. I feel like I'm not an older guy or a young guy right now, but really a good group. And a group that's going to have to, just compete. And, we're just at the start of training camp. We have, about a month and a half left before we even play a game. So a lot of work to do, a lot of corrections to get fixed, and that's just kind of what our daily journey on right now.
And Eddie mentioned, having Davante Adams in that group. What's that been like for you? I know you guys bounce ideas off of each other a lot.
No, he's incredible. He's done it for so long, and he's been successful for so long. And so just being able to go out there every day and ask questions, just kind of watch his work. It's helped me as a player. I know it's helped all the other receivers as a player, as players, and hopefully it just make us better.
You look at this offense as a whole, and obviously, Derek is the guy under center, the guy that's going to make everything go. How have you kind of seen him kind of take to this Josh McDaniels offense? Because it feels like, for better or for worse, he's learned so many things over his career here in Silver and Black that I imagine it's a bit of old hat for him just learning a completely new system.
Yeah, and half of it, when you learn a new offense, you got to learn the new verbiage, but you got to forget the old stuff as well. And so Derek has done a great job of that. He's had different coordinators and stuff throughout his career. But he's done a really good job of taking command and making it his own. And Coach McDaniels has done a great job of explaining it and why we do it and how we do it and how he's done it. And so every day, it's right now we're in the work phase, and not everything's perfect, but it probably never will be perfect. But just trying to get better every day and work out the nuances. And Derek's leading the charge with that.
Yeah, and a lot of the guys have been saying you've been watching a lot of Patriots film and stuff like that. Darren Waller, I think, said it was like Gronk on Wild is what he was watching out there. So for you, watching the Patriots receivers, what's really jumped off the page to you, and how you kind of applied it to now this offense for you?
Just how talented they were. Jacoby Myers, watching his stuff. Obviously Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola, Wes Welker, those guys. Very talented, and so just trying to get one little thing every time I watch them. Just for me, it's helped just to watch their film and see how they do things, and over the course of a game, how they set people up and do different things. And so definitely watch a lot of Patriots film, but kind of making our own as well.
Yeah.
We've talked about how we're kind of in the dog days of camp now. It feels like we've been here for a little bit. It's a bit of Groundhog's Day, but finally a game coming up for your 2022 Las Vegas Raiders on Thursday. And the game aside, right? Because what happens on Thursday, the starters play, not really of no consequence. But For you and the crew to go to Canton, to enjoy the Hall of Fame, Josh McDaniels has talked about a lot how excited he is to take you guys and walk those corridors. That's got to be pretty cool for the entire collection.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And for Coach McDaniels, I mean, his dad coached right there for so many years. He played in that stadium, and so I'm just excited for him to go back and kind of show it to all of us. I know he's really excited about it. A lot of tradition, a lot of pageantry with that. And so I'm just excited to, let everyone experience it around us, because I've never been, especially with the Hall of Fame, I've never been there, and just to see the history of it and, what it's all about.
Is that something that players still, like, it's important to players, like guys currently playing, to kind of see those busts, to see everyone, to see the history and understand kind of the depth of what you guys are doing? Yeah,
because you need a healthy perspective, right? You have to see the people that come before you and kind of laid the groundwork, and how it's evolved over the years, and seeing some of the statues and stuff like that. And so I think it helps you in the long term, because you have a healthy perspective from those things.
Yeah, I can only imagine taking in something like that. And for you, what's kind of your approach to the preseason? I know, still kind of waiting to see, how many of you guys are actually going to play and for how long. But for you, what's your approach, this first preseason game and all the other ones moving forward?
Just to get better every day. I think that's kind of a cliche, cheesy answer. And it doesn't matter if we're out there and, period 7 on a Saturday working, or it's, 3rd and goal in a preseason game. Our mentalities have the best play that play, and so if we do that and we're focused and we have great plays, great days, one after the other, then we'll have success along the way. And so for me, that's just kind of my mentality for it.
Mm-hmm. Before we get you out of here, Hunter, you know me and you go back a few years now. I'm a very serious, hard-hitting kind of guy, right?
Absolutely.
When you come up here, I'm going to put you on blast.
Yeah.
We were looking at the Twitter, and this is something Jesse and I have talked about for the past couple of weeks. The Joey Chestnut, Usain Bolt debate.
Yep.
A great debate.
Yeah.
Now, Jesse brought up a great point that you've never made your kind of prediction public.
Yeah.
Can I get that from you, Hunter?
Absolutely Joey Chestnut. I mean, because Joey Chestnut, I think he can run probably 100 meters?
100 meters.
And probably 15, 16 seconds, right?
I would
say that.
So.
He's on crutches now, but in his prime.
When he's
both of them in their prime.
Yeah.
Both of them in their prime. Usain Bolt was, 9.5 seconds?
Around there.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at a 5-second difference. I think that Joey can eat a hot dog 5 seconds faster than Usain Bolt. That's my take on it. And so that's what I'm sticking with.
See, I'm glad that that's your argument, because that was my argument to my boss, and he disagreed. He said Bolt all day, and I'm like, if he gets a 5 to 6 or 7 second head start, game over.
No, Joey Chestnut's taking the crown, and he's going to be here, I think, or he was just here, July 27th.
Oh man,
really? Oh,
yeah, a little eating contest.
How about that?
Should have asked him.
It was funny. I was talking to Mac last night actually about some of the great debate, and I think that's what's great about camp, right? You guys are together so much. It kind of lends itself naturally to having these conversations. All right, Joey Chestnut one aside. What do you think the best kind of conversational debate that you guys have had through camp is so far?
We've had a lot. Did Max? You asked Max?
I asked Mac. Yeah.
Or Mac?
Yeah.
You asked Mac. What did he say?
He said it was the rattlesnake in the mansion saga.
Oh yeah. What an interesting. And he has such a bad take on it.
See, and he told me that he had the best take last night.
No, he thinks that he's going to live in a mansion with a rattlesnake on the loose. There's no chance. If I went home to my house and there's a rattlesnake in it, I'm moving.
Yeah.
I'm not staying there.
No way.
I don't care how big the house is. I'll stay in a 1-bedroom apartment,
And he told me that his rationale was, and I think that he has a bit of a bias because he is a snake guy, right? And I'm certainly not a snake guy, but he told me that his rationale is that rattlesnakes do not bother humans unless taunted. And he's like, essentially, if I got a mansion, I'm gonna let the snake do its thing, I'm gonna do me, and we're just gonna kind of coexist.
Yeah, but just the thought of maybe that thing being in your toilet.
Exactly.
I can't live with
It's
that.
going to be roaming around.
I cannot live with that.
One of the other ones that we heard the guys talking about it as well was if you would rather fight a lion on land or an alligator in the ocean, or in the water, that is.
Yeah, it was a lion on land, alligator in the water. I'm taking a lion on land. They're both probably going to kill me, but I'd rather die on land than be just taken in the water.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. And you look, I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. I'm not a great water creature. I can swim, but I wouldn't categorize myself as a strong swimmer. So if I have any chance, it's got to be on land.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have Daniel in the lion's den. Like, there's some hope.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Some hope. You never read in the Bible about an alligator sparing a life?
No, that's an incredibly valid point.
Those things are monsters.
Incredibly valid point. Well, dude, this was was so much fun, per usual. I appreciate you taking some time to entertain our shenanigans.
Yeah.
So good luck the rest of camp.
Thank you.
Good luck in Canton. Good luck the entire preseason. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll see y'all.
The Raiders Training Camp Podcast is brought to you by SiriusXM. Subscribe to SiriusXM's Platinum Plan and get every NFL game, plus 24/7 NFL news, talk, and expert analysis. For more information, go to SiriusXM.com.
And a big thank you to our guy, Hunter Renfrow, for hanging out, man. Dude, every time we talk to him, it's a good day at the office, huh, Jesse?
Yeah, he's always good. Whether it's here, on the podium when he talks to the media, always good stuff. Hunter Renfrow just gets it.
He does. 100%. Gets it. Okay, we talked about it with Hunter a little bit. The Raiders are finally going to play a game. Granted, it's a preseason game, but nevertheless, the Raiders are playing a game, and no shortage of storylines as we march into week 1 of the preseason, Jesse, or I guess technically the Hall of Fame, however we're categorizing it. The biggest thing for you that you want to see out of the group on Thursday evening is?
Yeah, for me, honestly, I'm going to be watching the offensive line. You know, that's the battle that, we talked about a bit to open the show. You know, specifically, I'm going to be watching at right tackle, Brandon Parker, Alex Leatherwood, right guard, Dylan Parham, and Lester Cotton. Lester's been the talk of camp, from everyone, whether it's coach, Derek, the other offensive lineman. I mean, he's a guy now I want to see in the game, what he's able to do, in that battle. And also Parham. He's a guy that has looked good at times. He's been taking his fair share of laps, so I want to see in the game if it's clean.
Yeah, and I think for me, the biggest thing, and you kind of touched on it, is the combination of guys. Because we've heard from Josh and Dave that, hey, we're going to put the best 5 out there, and we're going to experiment to see what those best 5 are. And obviously, the Hall of Fame game is the perfect chance to kind of start that experimentation. So is there a world in which we see, Brandon Parker here and someone else on the inside? Sure, and just seeing the different combinations that they run through during the course of that 60 minutes, to me, is going to be one of the most enlightening things that we get from Thursday night.
Yeah, well, even today, we saw Brandon Parker at left tackle. So, again, we talk about it so many times on so many different platforms, about versatility being the buzzword with this coaching staff, and it is going to be. And that's where I think they really are going to experiment with so many different looks because they can. They do have that extra preseason game and stuff. So, I think one thing maybe for Raider Nation to really pay attention to is maybe don't freak out about where guys are lined up. This is their opportunity to do it in live fire, to get a look at what guys can do all along the offensive line to prepare for when, God forbid, somebody goes down later in the season.
And I know it's not the sexiest thing, but I'm going to be really interested come Friday morning to look at the snap counts and see who played and for how long. Because, look, I would be shocked if we saw Derek or Devontae or any of those guys. And I know that's disappointing to the fans in some sense. But at the end of the day, you don't need to worry about what you're going to have in Waller. You know what you got in Max.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You need to figure out those depth pieces. The offensive line is probably the biggest thing that you and I are going to be watching. But one thing that I don't think that we have talked enough about, and you and I are guilty of this as well, who's going to be the backup quarterback?
Yeah.
Who gets the majority of the burn Thursday night at the Hall of Fame game under center? I have no idea. I really don't.
I think it's going to be an even split. I think in this one.
That's a sellout answer. Come on,
it's
Jesse.
It's so bad. I know. I'm sorry, but I think that but from what I've seen in practice, I think Stidham gets the start, and then I think Nick Mullins takes over the second half. I don't think we see Garbers at all in this one.
No Garbers.
Yeah.
See, I would almost think the opposite, right?
Yeah.
Where I would think that you maybe give the young guy, the undrafted guy, a little bit more of a lead up because you do have that extra preseason games. And I think that, realistically, if you're Josh McDaniels, Nick Mullins has been in the NFL for a long time. You kind of know what you got in him. He knows Jarrett Stidham probably better than anyone else in this building.
Good points.
Let's see what the young guy has, right?
Yeah, I could see it playing out that way too. I mean, that's when you bring up those points, that's solid. I think early on wants to see, what do these guys have in terms of this battle here. And then as we get closer, and closer, that's where we see Garbers, hey, give the kid more of a shot and see what he can do.
And it's interesting too because, and Josh is he's kind of touched on it, but I wonder if we could give him the truth serum and figure out okay, you do have this extra preseason game. How does that change your plan of attack for this training camp, knowing that, hey, we got 60 minutes more than anyone else, excluding the Jags, obviously.
Yeah, and that's massive, especially with a new coaching staff that's trying to evaluate so many different positions and so many people on this team. You noted, look, they know what they have in Darren Waller, in Derek Carr, in Devontae, in Max, in Chandler Jones, even though he's a new face here. They know what they have in those big name guys. Having that extra preseason game is massive in the evaluation process as they try and trim down. Because let's be real, there's 90 guys on this team right now. They have to trim it down to 53. I mean, that is a ridiculously difficult task to have to do. So having that extra game, I would imagine, is something that they are thinking their stars for.
Yeah, especially talk about a new staff, still trying to kind of implement your system, your way of doing business, having that extra game. And look, in terms of like the very nitty gritty, like you're traveling too. You get to show this team, this is how we travel. This is the expectation of what happens when we're on the road. This is how we meet when we're on the road. This is how we eat when they're on the road. So I think that there's just inherent value in having that extra game for this staff in 2022.
Oh, 100%. And that's definitely how Josh and his staff are going to use this. He talked about it yesterday, saying that, like, look, it's been a long time since we've coached. It's been a long time since these guys have played in a real game. And so this is going to be that dry run. And I think the thing that's interesting with this is it's not an NFL city, like they'll go, in other areas during the season. So it's going to be interesting to see maybe, how he goes about it differently. Because for him, too, this is one of those deals where there's a lot of distractions. And it's not a game where win or loss really matters, but this is the hometown for Josh McDaniels, the stadium he played at as a kid, So obviously he's going to soak it up because he should. But this is a good opportunity, I think, for him to say, hey, guys, there's all this stuff around the game. This is where we need to concentrate on what we do. And that's something that's been said so many times is the details of this staff. And I think that's a great opportunity for it.
You can, and look, at the end of the day, the result of this game doesn't go in the record book one way or the other. But you can't tell me that the young kid from Ohio doesn't want to go home and fly back to Vegas with a W.
100%. I mean, look, they're all competitors at the end of the day. I don't care what you're doing if they're playing, Monopoly or whatever the heck it is. They want to win. So, of course, they want to come out with a dub. They're going to say, anytime you play, you want to get the development and all this stuff, for the preseason. But at the end of the day, like, they're looking to win this game because that's a feather in the cap.
100%. Last thing before we get out of here, though, another battle that you and I have talked about a little bit, but I'm excited to see actually play out on Thursday night. Punt and kick return.
Yeah.
Who takes those jobs, right? Because those are very much jobs that are open for someone to come steal.
Yeah, they are. That one's going to be interesting to see. Do we see somebody, break one off? Get a decent amount of yards.
I would love that.
Yeah, that was one thing I think we've talked about over the years, just specifically in the kickoff return game. There hasn't been many guys that have done it at a high level over the years and gotten more than, your allotted 20 yards, essentially, So I'm curious to see if somebody can emerge as an electrifying kick returner from this group. I think punt return, we talked about it. Maybe Hunter Renfro's job, it scales back a little bit more just with what he's going to be asked to do in this offense. So who really steps up in that position? That is going to be interesting to watch. One guy we've seen, get some burn back there, obviously DJ Turner, a guy we talk about a ton, but, another guy as well, and Keelan Cole, he's been back there a handful of times as well. So I'm real interested to see what both of them do with that opportunity back there.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Keelan. And we talk about there's been no shortage of guys rotating back there to kind of see what you have. And I think one thing that's really interesting to me is Dave Ziegler is usually in that area, right, where Dave has a close eye on who's returning kicks, who's returning punts. Because at his heart, he's a special teams guy. Yeah. So it'll be really interesting to see how that kind of rotation plays itself out on Thursday night.
And on that same trend, too, that's a guy that's, lower in the depth chart in terms of the receiver room. If you're able to emerge as a returner, that just ups your value, your versatility, to be able to make this team. So I think that's a big reason probably why Dave is down there watching that. Because look, that's an important position. And if you can do that, you're going to get yourself a roster spot. There's some guys that may not do that might not have a spot anymore.
And exactly. And you and I talked about it a ton, where guys have made really nice, long NFL careers out of being stud special teamers.
Yeah.
There's no shame in that game. It's an important part of the game. It's an important part of roster management. And it's something that we will find out. We will learn a lot more about it on Thursday night.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing I'm going to be watching on the way out here, too, the running backs, how that rotation works. Yeah. We've also seen Zeus, Zamir White back out there at practice. I want to see what kind of burn he gets because he's looked good in the little bit of snaps that I have seen from him.
And this is great because the next time we talk, we will actually have real, legitimate Raiders football to talk about. No, I don't think we're going to be talking about the Carr to Devontae connection and all that, but it'll be great to have like tangible things that we can write down and be like, okay, let's see how this changes from week 1 to week 2 in the preseason. I cannot wait. It's an exciting time of the year.
It is. And just to see guys in unscripted situations, like these scripted situations are great, but it's not the same as doing it at a game in live fire, So we're going to be able to talk about how so-and-so handled 3rd and 10, 3rd and whatever it is, or on defense, how they managed to get a stop in the red zone. That's the part that's going to be interesting. And there's going to be guys that jump off the tape that maybe we have or haven't noticed at camp. And that's the exciting part because that's where you really start to see some more of these storylines develop. And that's, I just can't wait. We're going to have football back.
Yeah, and we were talking about the storylines all reset on Friday morning when we wake up, and you and I are going to break it all down next week as we keep continuing through the adventure of of training camp. So for Eddie Pascal, my man Jesse Merrick, Hunter Renfrow, who was so good enough to join us for a few, Peyton and everyone else back in control, and we thank you. Enjoy the game Thursday night, and we will see you guys next week for our next edition of the Raiders Training Camp Podcast.
SiriusXM puts you inside the Raiders training camp. Catch all the info on the team, plus your music, talk, comedy, and more. Subscribe now and get your first 3 months free. Be there with the Raiders.